stretch of beach, the true horror began. Without warning, the man attacked Beatrice, binding her and subjecting her to a terrifying assault. Lena watched in shock. Imagine the vast expanse of the Australian Outback, the sun blazing overhead, casting long shadows over the endless stretch of sand and scrub. In February 2016, two young backpackers, Lena from Germany and Beatrice from Brazil, were eager to explore this remote wilderness. They were adventurers at heart, drawn to the rugged beauty that lay off the beaten path. One afternoon, they met a man through an online travel forum. He seemed friendly, a local who knew the hidden gems of South Australia's coastline. Offering them a lift to some secluded spots, he appeared to be the perfect guide for their outback adventure. As they drove deeper into the isolation of Coorong National Park, the atmosphere in the car began to shift. The man suggested a detour to a secret beach, a place untouched by the usual tourist crowds. Trusting his enthusiasm, Lena and Beatrice agreed, unaware of the sinister intentions lurking beneath his friendly facade. When they arrived at the desolate stretch of beach, the true horror began. Without warning, the man attacked Beatrice, binding her and subjecting her to a terrifying assault. Lena watched in shock, her mind racing. Seizing a moment of distraction, she fled, barefoot and desperate, into the unforgiving outback. The landscape was treacherous, the scorching sand burning her feet as she ran. Behind her, she could hear the man pursuing, the crunch of his footsteps growing louder. He wielded a hammer and a knife, his shouts echoing in the emptiness. Adrenaline surged through Lena as she navigated the harsh terrain, every instinct focused on survival. Just when hope seemed lost, she spotted figures in the distance, a group of fishermen. With the last of her strength, she screamed for help. The fishermen sprang into action, confronting the attacker and calling the authorities. In the chaos, Beatrice managed to free herself and was rescued soon after. The man was arrested, his heinous crimes bringing him to justice. This harrowing ordeal sent shockwaves around the world, a chilling reminder of the dangers that can hide behind a friendly smile. Lena and Beatrice's courage in the face of unimaginable terror became a testament to human resilience, their story a stark warning to travelers everywhere. In early 2023, a young woman named Emily moved into a cozy apartment in Sydney. It was a modest place on the third floor, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light and a view of the bustling street below. At first, Emily loved her new home. It was quiet, comfortable, and the perfect place for her to settle down after a long day at work. But it wasn't long before strange things began to happen. It started with small, seemingly innocuous occurrences. Doors would open on their own, creaking slowly as if pushed by an invisible hand. Lights would flicker for no apparent reason, plunging the room into darkness for just a heartbeat before coming back on. There were times when Emily would feel an inexplicable chill, a sudden drop in temperature that left her shivering, even though the windows were closed and the weather outside was warm. And then there was the feeling, a deep, unsettling sense that she was not alone, that someone was watching her. At first, Emily tried to rationalize it. The building was old. Perhaps the wiring was faulty, and drafts were common. She dismissed the feeling of being watched as her imagination running wild, fueled by the creaks and groans of the aging structure. But as the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences became more frequent, and Emily found it harder to ignore the growing sense of unease that seemed to pervade her home. One night, everything changed. It was late, and Emily had fallen asleep with the curtains drawn, the soft glow of the city lights filtering through the fabric. She awoke suddenly, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't immediately understand. The room was dark, and for a moment she lay still, listening to the silence. That's when she saw it, a shadowy figure standing outside her bedroom window. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her apartment was on the third floor. There was no balcony, no ledge that anyone could stand on. The figure was tall, its outline dark and indistinct, but there was no mistaking its presence. It was standing there, looking in at her. Panic surged through her, and she let out a scream, her voice piercing the stillness of the night. In an instant, the figure was gone, vanished, as if it had never been there at all. Shaking, Emily turned on every light in her apartment, her hands trembling as she did so. She searched every room, checked every lock, but there was nothing. No sign of an intruder, no evidence that anyone had been there. She tried to tell herself that it had been a dream, a figment of her imagination, brought on by the stress and the strange happenings in the apartment. But deep down, she knew what she had seen. The incidents didn't stop. The shadowy figure continued to appear, sometimes at the window, other times in the hallway, a fleeting presence that was there one moment and gone the next. Objects would move on their own. A chair shifted slightly out of place, a book that had been on the shelf now lying on the floor. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, an oppressive weight that made it difficult for Emily to relax or feel safe in her own home. Eventually, Emily made the decision to move out. She couldn't take it anymore. The sleepless nights, the constant fear, the sense that something was always just out of sight, lurking in the shadows. She found a new place, packed her things, and left the apartment behind, hoping to leave the terror she had experienced there as well. But the story didn't end with Emily. Not long after she moved out, new tenants moved in. It wasn't long before they too began to experience strange occurrences. They spoke of doors opening on their own, lights flickering, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. One of them even claimed to have seen a dark figure standing by the window late at night, just as Emily had. The building's reputation quickly grew. Neighbors whispered about the haunting, and some even claimed that the land the apartment was built on had a dark history. Rumors of an old house that had once stood there, where terrible things had happened. Whether the stories were true or simply the product of overactive imaginations, one thing was certain. There was something about that apartment that defied explanation. Something that made those who lived there feel as though they were never truly alone. The shadow in the window remains a mystery, an eerie reminder that sometimes the things we fear most are the ones we cannot see, the presence that lingers just beyond the edge of our perception, watching and waiting in the dark. In early 2023, a couple decided to embark on a camping trip in Victoria, seeking adventure and a break from their busy lives. They found a secluded spot deep in the bush, miles away from the nearest town. The setting was perfect, quiet, remote, and surrounded by nature. The couple spent the evening enjoying the peaceful atmosphere, the crackling campfire, and the beauty of the night sky above them. As darkness settled in, the air grew colder, and the bushland around them became eerily quiet. It was then that they began to hear strange noises, branches snapping, low whispers, and the unmistakable sound of shuffling footsteps in the distance. At first they brushed it off as the local wildlife. After all, they were deep in nature, and the rustling of animals was to be expected. But as the night wore on, the noises persisted, growing louder and closer. The couple exchanged uneasy glances, their nerves beginning to fray. The sounds no longer seemed random or natural. There was a pattern to them, a deliberate movement that suggested something or someone was out there, slowly approaching their campsite. The firelight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the trees. Suddenly, the couple saw it, a figure standing just beyond the tree line, barely visible in the dim light. The silhouette was motionless, watching them from the darkness. A chill ran down their spines as they realized that this was no animal. The figure was unmistakably human. Heart pounding, the man called out, his voice echoing into the stillness of the night. "Hello, who's there?" There was no response. The figure remained silent, standing perfectly still, its features obscured by the shadows of the bush. The couple's fear escalated, and the sense of danger became palpable. They quickly made the decision to leave. Panic set in as they hurried to pack up their belongings, their eyes darting back to where the figure had been. It hadn't moved, still watching, as if it was waiting for something. The fire crackled, and the couple worked as fast as they could, their hands shaking as they stuffed their gear into their bags. Finally, they got into their car, started the engine, and drove away, the headlights illuminating the dark track ahead as they left the campsite behind. The following day, still shaken by their experience, the couple stopped at a small town to gather themselves and share their story with some of the locals. When they described what had happened, they were met with grim expressions. One of the locals leaned in and told them that there had been reports of a man with a violent past seen wandering the area, a man known to stalk isolated campers. The realization hit them hard. They had come dangerously close to a potentially deadly encounter. The peaceful bushland they had sought for relaxation had almost turned into a nightmare. The couple was grateful to have trusted their instincts and left when they did, but the experience left a lasting impression, a chilling reminder of how quickly tranquility can turn into terror in the isolation of the Australian wilderness. Even today, the story of the bushland stalker serves as a cautionary tale for campers and adventurers. It's a reminder that while the beauty of the wilderness can be enchanting, there is always an element of the unknown, something lurking in the shadows, just out of sight, watching and waiting. Overlooking Sydney Harbour, the North Head quarantine station has a grim history dating back to the 1830s. Used to isolate those suspected of carrying contagious diseases like the plague, smallpox, and Spanish influenza, it became the final resting place for many unfortunate souls. In recent years, the site has been converted into a hotel and conference center, but the ghosts of the past refuse to rest. Guests and staff report chilling encounters, footsteps echoing in empty corridors, disembodied voices whispering in the dark, and apparitions dressed in 19th century clothing. One of the most haunted areas is the gravedigger's cottage. Visitors speak of a heavy atmosphere, sudden drops in temperature, and sightings of a shadowy figure believed to be a former gravedigger who succumbed to illness. Another hotspot is the morgue, where paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained electromagnetic activity and eerie EVP, electronic voice phenomena. People report feeling touched by invisible hands and experiencing overwhelming sadness upon entering the room. In 2020, a group of tourists on a ghost tour captured a photograph that sent shivers down everyone's spine, a translucent figure standing near the doorway, resembling historical photos of a nurse who worked during the influenza outbreak. The North Head quarantine station remains a popular destination for those seeking a brush with the supernatural. Its rich history, intertwined with tales of restless spirits, creates an unsettling yet fascinating experience. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the stories emerging from this haunted site are enough to make anyone think twice about what lingers beyond the veil of the living. In late November 2019, three friends, Tamara McBeath Riley, Claire Hockridge, and Fu Tran, set out from Alice Springs for a day trip into the sprawling expanse of the Australian outback. What was intended to be a leisurely drive quickly turned into a nightmare when their vehicle became bogged in a riverbed far from any main roads. With daytime temperatures soaring above 40 degrees C, 104 degrees Centigrade, and only limited supplies of food and water, the trio faced a dire situation. They decided to stay near their vehicle, hoping that staying put would increase their chances of being found. To conserve energy and escape the blistering heat, they dug themselves into the sand during the day and took shelter in the car at night. As days passed with no sign of rescue, desperation set in. They scrawled an SOS message in the sand and considered their dwindling options. After several days, they made the tough decision to split up in search of help. Tamara and Claire headed west, following a fence line, while Fu decided to go north. Tamara was found after 12 days, suffering from dehydration but alive, near a waterhole where she had managed to find some relief. She informed rescuers about the directions her friends had taken. 2 days later, Pooh was discovered by a pastoralist, having survived by drinking groundwater and eating ants to sustain himself. Tragically, Claire did not survive the ordeal. Her body was found after a relentless search, bringing a somber end to the harrowing event. Their story captivated the nation, serving as a stark reminder of the unforgiving nature of the Australian outback. It highlighted the critical importance of preparation, local knowledge, and the harsh realities that even short trips into remote areas can present life threatening challenges. Imagine a picturesque coastal town in New South Wales, Byron Bay, known for its stunning beaches and vibrant backpacker scene. In May 2019, 18-year-old Belgian traveller Theo Hayes arrives, eager to experience Australia's beauty before returning home. On the night of May 31st, Theo visits a local bar called Cheeky Monkeys. CCTV footage shows him leaving around 11 p.m., walking into the night, never to be seen again. When Theo fails to return to his hostel and misses his scheduled flight, his family becomes alarmed. They fly to Australia, and a massive search operation ensues. Volunteers scour the dense bushland, beaches, and cliffs surrounding Byron Bay. Drones, helicopters, and search dogs are deployed, but no trace of Theo is found. Investigators examine his phone records and discover a baffling digital trail. Theo's WhatsApp messages abruptly stop, and GPS data indicates he took an unusual route through rugged terrain towards the Cape Byron lighthouse, a path unlikely for someone unfamiliar with the area, especially at night. Theories abound. Did Theo meet with foul play? Was he disoriented and suffered a tragic accident? The lack of evidence is haunting. Despite extensive searches and public appeals, Theo's disappearance remains a chilling mystery. To this day, the case of Theo Hayes leaves a lingering unease. A young man vanished without a trace in a bustling town, surrounded by fellow travelers. His story is a sobering reminder of how quickly and inexplicably someone can disappear, leaving behind unanswered questions and a family's endless grief.